Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 74 of Two Amazon Sellers and a Microphone, brought to you by Solozo. Today, Kris and I are excited to be joined with a great guest, Ben Leonard. How are you doing, Ben?
I'm good, thanks. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Absolutely. Thanks for staying on, being on late over there. You're in Scotland. It's 8 o'clock, working late, man. I love it.
This is just the way it is, right? Because so many people in this space are in the States or Canada. Just used to talking late in the evening.
Yeah. It's the e-commerce, it's the entrepreneurial world. There is no stopping. You work whenever you can.
Pretty much, yeah. Burning the candle at both ends.
Oh man, well, Kris and I are excited to have you on and just talk a little bit about your story. You have a really cool story. It's a lot of Amazon sellers out there. Their goal is to sell at some point. You've exited your business. You're on to new things and launching new businesses. So we're just excited to go through all of it because it's a great story. It's inspiring, and we want to learn just sort of a little bit about your journey and what you've done. So we're glad. Yeah.
Happy to share the story and happy to talk about anything in this space, really, because I nerd out on it on a daily basis. So yeah, you want me to just kind of start at the beginning?
Yeah, well, just give us a little background. Yeah, how did it all start?
Absolutely. So prior to founding my first business, I had absolutely zero experience or background in business. I didn't get started until I was 27. My background is actually ecology and environmental sustainability. So when I started my business, I was working as a professional whale and dolphin nerd. And now I'm just an amateur whale and dolphin nerd. So my job, I was working in the oil and gas industry telling engineers they're not allowed to throw chemicals in the ocean. And I enjoyed that job. But I got super ill at the end of 2015, started 2016 with a heart condition. It was the third time that I got it. And I had to take a break for about 9 months from all of my sort of fitness hobbies. I did a lot of CrossFit, boxing, weightlifting, running. I was also into scuba diving. And the doctors basically said, you can't do any of that and you need to take all of the drugs. So I needed something to keep me in touch with those hobbies without actually doing them. And a few years previously, I'd had this idea just kind of in the back of my head. I'd been at a CrossFit session. At the end of the session, somebody said, "Oh, we beasted it today." And I remember thinking, we beasted it. Beast Gear. Beast Gear would be a cool name for a fitness brand. And I just left it there and forgot all about it. Fast forward another couple of years, I get really ill. I'm sadly tidying out my gym bag and looking at all the equipment that I'm not using and thinking, I could do a better job of that. So I founded this brand of fitness equipment called Beast Gear. And so began the experience of learning by doing, trial and error, and getting thrown in the deep end of e-commerce, something I had no experience of. That was at the start of 2016. Turned out I was actually pretty good at it. And I scaled it up to mid 7 figures, and the business was selling across the UK, Europe, Middle East, Australia. And at the end of 2019 or late 2019, I sold. And I'm allowed to tell you about this because it's public domain. I was Thrasio's, I think, second European acquisition. And they use me in tons of their PR. So it's not like I'm breaking any non-disclosures or whatever by mentioning them. So yeah, I sold to Thrasio late 2019, which was crazy, right? Because they only formed, I think Thrasio formed September 2018. So I was like a year into them existing. But this was before the whole aggregator thing really, kicked off. And now I'm still building brands, partly because I love it, and I've learned so much from selling the first one that I'm now building brands with a view to sell. Right when I started the first one, I started it as a hobby to maybe earn some pocket money, give me something to do. I didn't think about selling it until I was well into doing it. Now I'm building brands with a vision to sell. And the other reason I'm still building brands is because, as you guys know, this is such a fast-moving industry and things change all the time. If I'm going to advise my clients in my consulting or those who I'm trying to get an exit for in my brokerage, I need to have skin in the game, and I need to have an understanding of what this is like from the point of view of an e-commerce merchant. So in a nutshell, that's kind of what I've been doing for the last several years. And, I love this space. I love talking about it. I feel like I've benefited quite a lot from the experience, and that's why I'm teaching and consulting, right? Trying to kind of give back in a way. I'm a people person. I like teaching. I guess I like to think that I'm a bit of an antidote to those gurus out there who have never really actually done anything, but they have shady Facebook ads of themselves standing in front of Lamborghinis.
Yeah.
So, I'm here to kind of help people with the benefit of having actually been there and done it.
Yeah, anytime I see a Lamborghini or a nice car in an ad, I'm immediately going the other direction. So it's not. I'm like okay, yeah, I'm out of this. They rented that for a few hours and they made a video for it. So just to tell caution out there. But I want to kind of go back to your story a little bit. So you started the business off, and then Thrasio, obviously, they're like the biggest person or biggest company in the space right now. Like they're buying all kinds of stuff. But you did catch them. They caught you early, like 2019. They were just kind of coming around. What was that like? Like, did you go find them, or was that like a reach out thing from them? But how'd that look at?
Well, I made the decision to sell in early 2019. I think I made the decision in February.
And real quick, what was that all about? Why just trying to get out of it because, or just move on?
Well, it wasn't about like, some people decide to sell because they're kind of fed up. I wasn't fed up. I loved my brand. I still do love my brand. It was about the fact that I knew that there was money to be taken off the table. The business was reaching a stage where I was running around like a headless chicken, putting out fires. And yes, I had hired a team and I was outsourcing and I was automating and all that good stuff that you need to do. But the scale and the growth was so rapid that we were reaching a point where I was going to need to potentially either open an office, say in the Philippines, or locally. And I didn't have the resources or the capacity to do it, nor did I really want to. My wife was pregnant. We wanted to move house. It was the right time for me and my family to sell. I think maybe if that brand wasn't my first business, say I'd already had an exit a few years before, and I had that safety net, then I might have kept it on. But a piece of advice I received actually from my dad, and he didn't make this up, right? He got this somewhere else himself. But the idea is sell your business at the point of peak romance, which basically means that you're at the point where the graph is either going to go really high up, right? This is going to explode. You're onto something here. Or it's just not, right? It's either going to plateau or go down the way. And if you sell and then it does continue to grow wonderfully, you're probably not going to regret. You're not going to say, well, I got out too early, because a significant part of your earnout is going to be based on the performance after you sell anyway. And if you get out and then it doesn't go quite so well, you got out at the right time. So anyway, it was the right thing for me and my family. So yeah, I made the decision to sell early 2019, like February. And then in the March, I contacted a broker. You got to remember that this is not a long time ago. It's only 2 years ago, but nobody, we know that e-commerce is legitimate. We know that e-commerce businesses are real grown-up businesses. But people buying businesses still, despite the fact that the internet has existed for decades, still until very recently believed that if it didn't have a roof and a door, it wasn't a real business. It wasn't worth anything. So the idea of buying and selling an e-commerce business was still pretty new, and I had no idea who would buy it. So I approached a broker. And the broker took quite a long time to get the business ready, and during that time made a few mistakes. But to their credit, they did introduce me to a buyer who bought my business. So fair enough. And that buyer was Thrasio. And they made me an offer, which was fair. It's also fair to say that now that the landscape has changed, I would have got a lot more money for my business if I was selling it now, because the multiples are higher. But that's life. And so, yeah, I got out end of 2019. And, I didn't want to pack up and leave e-commerce altogether because I love it now, right? So my former career is well behind me. I'm still interested in that type of stuff, just from like a a personal interest perspective, but no longer as a professional. And from that experience, my accountant and I, so my accountant who looked after the accounts for Beast Gear, she's got like 20 plus years experience in mergers and acquisitions. She's an e-commerce specialist accountant, and we basically put our heads together and said, you know what, we could do a better job of the brokering part. And there's no one in the UK and Europe doing this. And so we set up a brokerage called Ecom Brokers. And what we think is special about that is that most of the other brokers are basically just middlemen who, and there are some good brokers out there, I'm not dissing them, but what I'm saying is that many of them lack the lived experience of the blood, sweat, and tears into your e-commerce business, crying down the phone to sell a support at 3 a.m. And they also lack the experience on the accounts side. They're not accountants. They're pulling out reports from Seller Central and Shopify and whatever, but they're not accountants. And because of that, there's quite a bit of weakness in the financial side. The tricks of the trade that my accountant can do to A, get your business really properly neat and tidy, set up to sell, but B, maximize your profits, or rather maximize like your seller's discretionary earnings. And so we started this brokerage, which I like to think that it's kind of like a brokerage plus, because many of the brokers, you'll go to them and you'll say, hey, I want to sell my business. And they'll say, okay, fine. And they'll pull the reports, they'll give you a valuation, and they'll slap it on their website, like the eBay of businesses. And off you go. And that's absolutely fine if that's what you want. But what we'll do is people will come to us and they'll say, I want to sell my business now. We'll say, fine. We'll say, we're not going to sell it right now because we're going to take a little bit of extra time to get this really neat and tidy and built to sell from both the e-com operations side and the financial side to maximize the valuation. And then we'll get other people come to us and say, well, I want to sell, but I've got a number in mind, or I want to sell in 6 months or a year or whatever. And we'll work with them, me on the e-commerce operations and, well, the whole e-commerce piece, right from working with your manufacturers and suppliers to, marketing your business to the customers and potential customers. And then Allison on the numbers and the accounts. So that's why I kind of think we're a little bit different. So, I'm kind of rambling, but the lived experience of selling the business led to what I'm doing now.
Well, I like the brokerage part. I mean, it's almost like you're a broker plus, like you're advising as well, as opposed to just brokering the deal and helping them position themselves to sell. You're helping them maybe even improve their business while they're trying to sell, so they can get higher multiples, etc. I'm sure that coincides really well with your consulting business that you run as well.
It does. So, just to go back to your point about the brokerage plus thing, we haven't kind of officially launched it yet, but basically the advice we've been giving to clients has almost turned into like an accelerator. And so we're almost about to officially launch our accelerator, which is where businesses where perhaps the owner no longer wants to be involved or quite so hands-on can come to us, and we will take them on and effectively run the business and accelerate it in a managed plan towards an exit. That's almost ready to go officially. But yes, you're right. It does feed into the consulting. So I guess there's two main ways that we tend to bring people through the brokerage. That is my clients in the consulting. So I mentioned before that, I kind of teach people based on, the benefit of what I've experienced over the last kind of several, 5 years. And then Allison has the accounting firm, Mint Accounting, and they look after multiple e-commerce clients selling on Amazon and off Amazon on their own websites. And eventually they're ready to sell. Because if there's one thing we've all learned in the last several years, it's that, you don't really make real money until you exit. I mean, you remember back in 2014, 15, 16 and earlier, people were getting into this because they thought that they could make, have a side hustle, make some extra income. And some people were selling it as passive income, which of course is nonsense because it's bloody hard work. But now people are getting into this with an exit in mind straight off the bat. And that's exciting for everyone, I think, because it changes lives and it teaches people to build a big boy grown up business now. I think, gone are the days of sourcing a product, right? It's not about sourcing a product. I need to find something to sell on Amazon. It's about building a brand, building a suite of products to solve related problems for a particular group of people, whether that's people who like to knit or people who ride motorcycles, right? I remember you guys all know Scott Volker.
Oh yeah,
that's how I got in this thing,
right?
Yeah,
exactly right. The guy's a legend. Some people diss him, right? And they are completely wrong. The guy's an absolute hero. I used to listen to his original podcast, The Amazing Seller, back in the day.
Yep.
And I remember he used to say, "The riches are in the niches." And my initial reaction to that was to scream at my podcast player and say, "No, the word is niche." But actually, he's right. The riches are in the niches, right? I remember he used to give this example of producing products for people who go bass fishing off of a kayak, right?
Yeah.
It's so niche, but the people that do go bass fishing off of a kayak, I bet they absolutely love it and they get really jazzed up. And if you created a brand to solve related problems for that particular group of people, you could absolutely smash it out of the park. And that's what it's about, right? It's no longer about just making a quick buck by selling stuff. It's about building a brand with an exit in mind.
You're so right. And it's funny you bring up Scott Volker. I mean, I remember everything I did, I had that podcast on. If I was doing the dishes, I was listening to that podcast, driving in my car, listening to it. And he always kept saying, take action. And that was, that's true. You have to just find something and do it. But I want to go to, because you're interesting. You mentioned this before, but when you started, this all started because you thought of a cool brand name. So it wasn't like you went brand name, then product, and found products that fit who your target was, which is that's not super common. I would think most people are looking for a product that is a niche product, and then they're trying to figure out a brand name afterwards. So let's go back to the beginning. You found this brand name, and then you just started sourcing products that fit into that niche, right?
Yeah. So I don't teach people to do it how I did it, because when I did it, I didn't know I had this entrepreneurial spark in me, and I didn't know diddly squat about e-commerce, right, or branding or marketing, right. I make no, I don't lie about that. That's the truth, and that's how I got into this. Yeah, what happened was I had one day after a training session at CrossFit thought, Beast Gear would be a cool name for a brand of fitness kit. It wasn't until a couple of years later that I got really ill and had to take time out of fitness, but wanted to kind of stay connected to that side of my life. And then I was looking at my gym kit and thought I could make some better products. I was looking at my speed rope and it wasn't very good. And I thought I could make a better speed rope. And then I thought, oh yeah, I had that idea for Beast Gear. So then I created the first product, which was called the Beast Rope. And basically I found some manufacturers on Alibaba, as you do. And I went through the iterative process of going back and forward on samples. I like this bit, I don't like that bit. Can we make this bit better? That bit's not quite so good. That type of thing. Until we settled on something I liked. I placed an order for 500 units. And the last order I placed before I sold the business was for just over 250,000 units of that product.
Yeah.
And that was pretty insane.
And I think that's a good story just in terms of to tell people what can happen. I mean, how far things can scale quickly.
Yeah.
And that's great, but there's also a lot of challenges.
Yeah.
I mean,
there were a lot of challenges along the way, and it was a process of learn by doing, right? I know that makes it sound stupidly easy, And of course it's not, but it when you break it down, that's pretty much what it is, right? It's try something, because I have a scientific background, right? And so I liked the scientific approach of this. You try something, you observe it, just like a scientific experiment. You look at the results, you analyze the results, you tweak what you've done to hopefully get a different result or improve on your result, and you go again. And that's what I did. And as I went along, I learned more and more and more, and I became more and more proficient until we got to a point where, this is going well and I know what I'm doing. I'm competent. I'm going to quit my job. And I continued to scale. And I actually had plans to put the business into both the US and China before I sold. But, circumstances changed. I realized that I could get a decent amount of money for it. And you know what the funny thing is, right? Is even, traditionally, traditional business sale, you're looking at a multiple of more like 6, 7, 8. When I sold, a 3x multiple was really pretty damn good for e-commerce. Mm-hmm. Now, that's probably on the lower side, lower to standard, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
So I sometimes have to say to myself, imagine if the business wasn't an e-commerce business, it was like a normal business, so to speak. I would have sold it for a crazy number. And the way that this is going is multiples are catching up really fast with, normal multiples, if you like. It's a fascinating industry to be in. And I think we're all grateful to be in it at the moment, considering what's been going on in the world for the last year.
No doubt. Now, I've got a question about this because this is another thing that strikes me as interesting about your story is you didn't sell in the U.S. market.
No.
And touching on that, you launched, you scaled in sounds like Europe and UK mostly, and then you expanded to other marketplaces besides that. But I talked to a ton of sellers that are European or wherever that are launching their first product in the US, thinking that they can do better. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, sounds like you had a ton of success launching it. And do you think you would have had a successful launch if you started in the US with the same products as the UK and Europe?
Good question. So to come to the first bit, I think you can launch in the US from the UK or Europe and have a success. And you can even do it straight off the bat. Like, you don't have to launch here first. Mm-hmm. The reason I launched here first was, as I said, I wasn't an e-commerce or business expert. And it just seemed more natural to me. And I was more comfortable and it made more sense to me. It was like, I'm in the UK. I'll start selling in the UK. Mm-hmm. To be honest, the idea of selling in the US to begin with didn't really occur to me. With hindsight, well, maybe I should have done it as a bigger market. But on the other hand, with the UK being a younger and less mature platform, perhaps because of kind of my scientific approach that kind of helped me to, I developed a whole bunch of strategies which were kind of not the standard things being taught in all the courses, which allowed me to kind of get ahead of the competition who'd been selling for several years longer than me. Perhaps I wouldn't have been able to do that in the US on a more mature marketplace. And then what happened was I was able to start selling across Europe, and I enrolled for something called Pan EU, which you guys are probably familiar with. Some of us just might not be if they're in the US, but that's where Amazon will actually, I was able to send my inventory into the UK fulfillment center, then Amazon would distribute it right across Europe for me. That's changed slightly now because of Brexit, but that's another story. But anyway, the moment I did that, my sales almost doubled overnight.
Wow.
But what was phenomenal about that is it's not actually easy to register for Pan EU, because you have to register for VAT in France, Germany, Italy, Spain, Poland, Czech Republic, the Netherlands, and Sweden now as well. And when I did it, I think I just had to register in 7 countries. But anyway, it was a total pain in the ass. Registering for VAT in some of these countries is not straightforward. It's just filling in a form. There's all sorts of stuff you have to do, which is really actually fantastic, because the higher the barrier to entry, the more hoops you have to jump through, the more your competitors say, I can't be bothered.
Yep.
It's not worth it. But actually, it is worth it. And when I jumped through all those hoops, I cleaned up because my competition didn't bother to do it.
And think I'm like an easy victory it is for a company like Thrasio just to go to the US marketplace and they can just make their money back pretty quickly. Like that, you weren't even in the US yet.
That's one of the attractions of the business, right? To the buyer, to Thrasio, was that the business was doing really well in an English-speaking market, the UK, and actually in Australia. Well, we only had a few SKUs in Australia, and we were smashing it across Europe as well. All we had to do was rinse and repeat in the US. As it turns out, the brand is only just about to launch now in the US in 2021 because of an IP dispute. But that's been resolved. So, but they saw the attraction, right? They saw that potential upside of not just growing the brand in the existing markets, but taking it to the US and then Canada and Mexico, etc.
Yeah.
Easy. I mean, that's a good, easy win for them to do.
I think there's a lesson there as well, right? It's tempting to try to do everything to make your business as wonderful and all singing and all dancing as possible to make it like attractive to a buyer. But you got to leave something on the table for them. Like I know a guy who sold his business, and I know the buyer he sold it to as well. And it's funny because I've had the conversation with both the buyer and the guy who sold the business. And this guy is an absolute brain box. Like he's a data like nerd, and he optimized his business to the nth degree. And on paper, it looked absolutely amazing. But unfortunately, after the buyer bought it, there was like nowhere for them to go. There was like nothing additional they could do. And if anything, they kind of like made it worse because they no longer had this guy. Mm-hmm. So, there's a lesson in there somewhere. Make your business wonderful, but leave something on the table to make it attractive for a buyer.
Yeah, leave a little meat out there. Get a little meat on the bone.
Leave a little meat on the bone.
Yeah, and we hear that a lot. The best time to sell is when you're way on that upslope.
Yep.
Because
romance.
That you're exactly point of peak romance. That's a good way of putting it. Once you sold, and now you've this baby that you built and nurtured and you sold. What did that feel like?
It was crazy because I did the deal on Halloween 2019, and I hadn't sold the business before this, and I was quite naive and on a few aspects of the process, purely just through having not done it before. And it wasn't until actually a few weeks before the deal was done that I realized or discovered that the date that the deal needed to be done by, which was Halloween, was actually critical because the buyers model everything and they have to report to their shareholders. If they don't hit the deadline, then technically their model no longer applies, right? Their financial modeling is no longer correct because the dates are wrong. And for some of these buyers, well, you're just another business. So if the deal hadn't gone through, it may never have happened. I'm sure I would have sold it eventually to somebody, but so that was kind of scary because the deal didn't go through until 4 minutes to midnight.
Whoa.
So I was kind of crapping my pants. But then after it was done, it felt kind of surreal. And then the first chunk of money hit my bank account, and that felt really weird. Also really good because then I bought a Tesla, which was nice. But the thing is that neither me nor my wife, we're not really very materialistic people. We don't really buy stuff, and our life hasn't particularly changed other than we have that safety net, right? Mm-hmm. And actually I think people operate at their best when they're relaxed. It's like a sports person or a top athlete. Take a soccer player who is scoring a lot of goals. The more he scores or she scores, the more relaxed they are, the more confident they are. It's a positive feedback loop. They're just going to score more goals. So if you're a business person and you're relaxed, you got no financial worries, you're just going to keep operating at your best. On the other hand, if you're a soccer player and you're not scoring, the more stressed you are, the worse it gets. If you're an entrepreneur or a business person and you've got financial worries, cash flow's a problem, you can't pay your employees, you got issues with your personal finance, you're not operating at your best, you make poor decisions, it all goes to hell. So having that safety net now allows me to operate at my best. And also, we spoke before about barrier to entry. Some of the brands that I'm developing or have kind of ideas for have a higher barrier to entry in terms of the financial, in terms of the capital required to start, which is fantastic because it's not saturated. Because, when I started Beast Gear, I was able to order some jump ropes for a few dollars, and I was working on a laptop in a cupboard in my apartment. Now I can potentially start brands for products which cost, many, many times more than that.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because that's the other benefit of selling is when you exit. I mean, okay, yeah, now you have this chunk of cash can be your nest egg. It can be but it also allows you to launch your new business with a lot more resources up front. And so
yes.
you can, like you said, you can enter new markets, enter things that would have been cost prohibitive. You would not have been able to order 500 units of something that cost $100 a piece when you first started.
Precisely.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
it's there are so many people out there that say to me, I'm not sure if I want to sell, I'm not sure if I want to sell. And I just kind of think, have you got other business ideas? Oh yeah, I do, but I can't start them yet because, money. It's like, well, sell then, take some money off the table, pay off your mortgage, settle your debts, stick a big chunk of it in some, go see a financial advisor and decide what to do with it, but put a big chunk of it in something safe that's going to grow at a decent, steady rate. Read the Tony Robbins book. What's it called? Unshakable. Or he's got another one, Money, Master the Game. Read that. Do what he says. Look after yourself, and then take a big whole chunk of it as well and start another business.
You forgot buy a Tesla also.
Also bad.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. So
yeah.
So now I'm assuming you're in the midst of launching this second business, and you're consulting, and you're doing your brokerage.
Yeah.
I mean, that's got to be a lot of fun. Now you're not just talking about your business, you're digging into other, helping others succeed. I mean, is it a lot of fun?
It's great fun because, well, I'm a people person. I like talking to people. I like helping people. I love seeing other people succeed, and sharing in that, and kind of almost living vicariously through them. There's nothing cooler than when a client says, hey, I did that thing you said to do, and now, here's the result, or whatever. Or when somebody sold their business and they take a screenshot of their bank account and they're just like mind blown, It's a wonderful feeling for them, obviously, but and for me. And I like to feel like, okay, I'm not doing this for free, but yeah, I like to feel like I'm giving back to the community in a sense that's given me so much, particularly because in e-commerce, it's so overwhelming. It's so difficult to know who to listen to. And I'm not so arrogant as to say, oh, everyone should just listen to me, but at least listen to someone like me who's been there and done it, right? Is what I'm saying. And so, it's exciting, and I like doing it. And it might sound like I'm doing tons of stuff. Like, how do you have time to do your own brand, do the brokerage, and do your consulting? Well, the answer is, of course, when you start off your first brand, you're doing absolutely everything. Of course, one of the main things that you learn along the way is that you can't do absolutely everything because you'll never get anywhere. You have to work on your business and not in your business. And so I have teams. I have the vision, and they implement.
And this is what does a coaching call look like with you? Because I can tell you just from right now, like, you command a virtual room really well. Like, I'm really dialed into your story. Like, I really want to like, what's a call with you look like? Like if and Dustin, our sellers, I come to you and say, hey, Ben, here's my account. I want to sell in like 18 months, 24 months. Here's where I'm at. Here's my projection. Like, what's all that look like?
Well, we talk about where you are now, where you want to be. What are your biggest obstacles as you see them? And we kind of just riff from there, if I'm being perfectly honest, right? There's not a formula because everyone is different in terms of how they work and how they communicate and how they learn. And everyone's business is different. And I think that's one of the big problems with this industry is that some people have tried to plug everyone's business through some sort of magical machine or magical course. It doesn't quite work like that. The requirements for a business selling premium products, which cost a lot, versus somebody selling little widgets which don't, with very different margins, very different customers. Maybe you've got hundreds of SKUs, maybe you've got 4 SKUs, right? It's all very different. So a coaching call is really just about understanding each other, where you are, where you want to be, getting clear on what matters to you and what doesn't. And then we go from there. And then, it may be very strategic and high level, or we might be getting quite into the nitty gritty of a particular topic. Like, optimizing, sale. My problem is that sales have dropped for this particular listing. Well, let's dig into that. Or it could be more strategic and high level. Like, what do I need to do to achieve the valuation that I want in the next 6 months, or whatever it might be.
Yeah, I think that's super important. And Dustin and I, we've mentioned this before, and you've probably talked about it too. This whole Amazon e-commerce, sell products and start a business, it can get a little lonely sometimes, right? Like you're not really having anybody to talk to. You're kind of just doing it on the fly. You're watching YouTube videos, podcasts. So I think that's important sometimes, where we just get out and talk to other people who've been there, like yourself. Get a focus, get a path, and just stay on that path and stay totally narrowed in. And that's where, like, I wish I would have done something like that when we first started out. Dustin was like, we didn't have anywhere to go like that. We just kind of were throwing stuff on the wall and seeing where it goes.
But you know what? Give yourself a break for that, because it's fairly natural to do that, right? I mean, I did that with the first brand. I didn't build it to sell it initially. It wasn't until I was like a good year and a half, almost 2 years in, really, where I was like, right, I could sell this. And I started to really prepare with that in mind. And with the benefit of hindsight, I would have, prepared straight off the bat. I was halfway through that business before I read two books. One called The E-Myth Revisited by Michael E. Gerber, which is like the Bible in e-commerce.
Great book.
Or business in any way. Yeah, it's a great book. And the next one was a book called Built to Sell by a guy called John Warrillow. So you know how in the E-Myth, Michael Gerber works through this case study of the pie shop. Which is great. In Built to Sell, John Warrillow works through this case study. There's this guy who's got this marketing agency, and I think the whole case study example is really good because you can relate to the characters and you can think about how you might apply it to your business. But it wasn't until I was like halfway through that business before I read those books and started to tweak how I was doing things and get a bit more organized about it, a bit more grown up, if you like, big boy business. And now, of course, everything I learned from those books, from selling, from going through the due diligence process, now feeds into how I build businesses from the ground up with an exit in mind. But having said that, right, there's an important thing I want to drop in here, because we were talking before about building a brand, and the mistake so many people made initially in their business, right, was they just wanted to sell a thing or stuff. And it was not something that they were passionate about, right? It wasn't bass fishing from a kayak. Even if you're selling with an exit in mind is not permission to go find some products that you think you can build something to exit, right? You still need to build a business around a niche, around a particular group of people, and preferably that's the group of people that you relate to, that you know a whole ton about, probably because you are one of them, right? If you're not interested in knitting, don't start a knitting brand. Definitely start a brand with an exit in mind, but think about stuff that you get out of bed for. And if that's, I don't know, kite surfing, start a kite surfing brand. But don't start a knitting brand.
That's good advice. It's and we talk about that a lot. Sometimes it's hard to sell if you don't know your audience very well, and if you're your own audience, it's really easy to
scratch your own itch.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's vital.
Yeah. Well, okay. So somebody who's listening to this right now, and they're like, I've got to talk to Ben more. I need consulting with him. How do they contact you? How do they reach out to you and get started with this?
Yeah, sure. If you want me personally, it's my website is benleonard.pro. I'm on LinkedIn. Just search for Ben Leonard. You'll find me. And I'm on like all the social media channels. I'm not on TikTok, but I'm on like Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, at Ben Leonard Pro. So URL's benleonard.pro. My handles are Ben Leonard Pro. If you want to sell your business, like now or in the future, go to ecombrokers.co.uk. If you go there, there's an ebook you can download for free, which will help you start thinking about how to get your business ready to sell. There's a whole ton of free articles on there. So whether you want to work with us or not, go there and, benefit from that information.
That's great stuff. And I encourage everyone to reach out to you. This has been a great conversation. And we need to get you back on in the future as well, because we could dive into a million topics. There's so many.
Sure. I love this stuff.
And it's fun to hear a story from someone who did it, succeeded, came out on the other end, is doing it again, because that should be really motivating to others out there of what's possible. So it's great to get your story and just learn what you've done and where you are. But we'd love to get you back on and just dive into just the nitty gritty. There's so much that we could talk about. So we'll definitely plan to do that.
I love talking to you guys. You're right. Anyone can do it. That sounds really cheesy, right? It's a really cheesy, cliched phrase, but basically it's true. You just got to, do the work and, do it right. And don't sell widget spinners.
The three of us.
Dustin can talk about that one.
Oh yeah, I've got a good horror story about. Don't ever jump on a trend. That's one. Yeah, that's right. Don't jump on a trend. I got a story about those suckers right there. I got caught up in those and lost some money, but it's a good story. So you're right.
Story. Okay, yeah. Right. We'll have to do an episode on that.
Yeah. It's a really good story too, because actually that had a positive to it. I ended up being able to create a brand out of that, just not with those.
Every failure provides, positives, right? I think Michael Jordan said something along the lines of, the reason I'm so successful is because I fail like all the time.
That's right. He took all the shots. Yeah. If you take every last second shot, you're going to make some of them.
Exactly.
Man, well, did you have something you were going to add there, Kris?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, just to sellers out there, like it'll be worth your time and to take a call with Ben, because it'll pass you up. You'll pass people up in the knowledge you're going to get from them. So I harp on that a lot, because we've been through this. I've done it. We didn't reach out for people to help us. So if you're a seller out there and you're kind of spinning your wheels, you don't know where to go, and you need to focus, Ben's going to be a good guy to talk to, because he's been down this road.
Thanks. That's really kind of you. Well, thanks for having me on the show, guys. I've absolutely loved talking to you. And let's do it again sometime.
Let's do it.
Absolutely. So thanks for coming on, Ben. Everyone who's listening, go to benleonard.pro, book a consulting call with him. If you're like what you're listening to right now or watching, if you're watching us on Facebook or YouTube, make sure you subscribe to our page, like the Facebook page, subscribe to our YouTube channel, turn on notifications so you're notified when we go live. Also, please subscribe to our podcast on whatever podcast channel you're listening to us on. We're on all of them. So hopefully you're on one now, and make sure you leave a review if you can, and subscribe to the podcast so that you get all this content every time we go live. Ben, thanks so much for coming. We'll do it again. Everyone, we'll be at this again tomorrow. Have a great day.
Cheers.